Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. Man, as always, before we get started, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to try not to cough up my lungs while we're on here. Subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you get the like. There's fucking shit, dude. What am I even talking about? There's a share button. Share the podcast. Let people know what we got going on. I've been sick all week. It's been a crazy week for me. Let's see. Let's just read the stuff that went on this week. I bruised my ribs in jiu-jitsu class. The starter went out on my car. I got a horrible cold, sinus infection. Can't breathe out of my whole body. But I'm feeling better. We're here. We're doing the podcast. We're 1 day late. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about being 1 day late. It would have been as congested as I sound right now to hear me try to do it yesterday. It would have been horrible. But this week, dude, I don't know. I was setting up for the podcast. I knocked an ashtray. There was a jar. It's just a jar full of ashes. Knocked it off of a table. I've been sleeping on the couch in the living room, in the studio all week. 2 weeks now, maybe. Dude, to be real, I think I was complaining about my ribs on the last podcast. And this week in jiu-jitsu, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it anyway. Like the guys talk about, just fucking get some, dude. Let's go get some. And I did. I went and got it. And on the last day, Wednesday night, my starter went out as I was leaving work. Thursday, I had told everyone at class, hey, I'm going to be there tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow. Thursday, last fundamentals class of the week. See you there. And I'm working on the 4 agreements, be impeccable with your word. So when the starter went out, I didn't have a ride. I was going to have to pay for Lyft to and from class. Who knows how long until the car was going to be fixed. It is fixed now, which is something quick with the fix on this one. But I told everybody I was going to be there, so I texted a guy, the only guy from class that I have his number, and I said, hey, buddy, also Dave, double Dave in there, me and this guy. And I told him, hey, buddy, sorry, the starter went out of my car. I'm not going to be in class today, but I'll see you next week. And he's like, man, that sucks. But I'll see you later. So I felt guilty for missing the class, so I just went anyway. Even though I was sore, my fucking knee hurt. On Wednesday, I did class, and then I came home, and I wasn't satisfied with the amount of physical activity I got. I went out and ran 4 miles. My knees felt like they felt like they were bending on like a forwards and sideways axis. My knees felt awful. It's a big complaining podcast. It's a big sick complaining. I've been taking myself to Panera Bread. It's going to be that kind of podcast. No, I don't know, man. I'm just like, my ribs are feeling a little better, but I went and I just pushed it a little bit too hard. I hate missing class. I don't want to miss class. I feel like if I miss the Monday class, which I'm going to have to miss this week because I'm still sick, I'm exhausted, sitting here just talking. Like, I'm definitely not going to, and I don't want to get anybody from class sick. Honestly, on Tuesday and Wednesday, I was like coughing during sparring, like into my sleeve, like a wet, horrible shit in my chest cough. So, and I felt bad about that, but nobody in there believes in COVID-19. So it wasn't like I felt that bad about it. And I know I don't have COVID because I probably already had it 6 to 8 times. And I think I got the antibodies. I'm not going to lie. I told my mom I was sick though. My mom is a nurse. She's the manager of like a long-term ICU, I think, or something like that. And so I always call her when I have horrible things going on and, things that aren't like the long-term ICU. And she told me to get the vaccine. That's what she said. I was like, yeah, I have a cold. What should I do? She was like, you should get your vaccine. And I was like, well, what? I was like, well, and this is what... she's like, you should schedule and get your vaccine as soon as you can. I was like, isn't the thing about the people that are dying from the vaccine or getting really sick, like they're really sick or they've got something and then they go get the vaccine? Aren't you giving me the worst medical advice right now? I didn't address it. I didn't think about it until later. I was like, what if I felt so bad? And then I just went right out and I got the fucking COVID vaccine. I die. That'd be like my mom be like, well, I'm in my mom's long-term ICU unit. And I wake up, she's standing over me like Tony with Christopher Moltisanti. And she's looking at me like, she's like, I love you, but you're compromising. When I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Yeah, that's exactly how it'll go. I'm gonna have to cough at some point. I mean, there's stuff building up. I'll go off camera. I'll figure out what I have to do. But yeah, dude, I don't know. I love doing the jiu-jitsu. I love doing it all the time, but I'm going to have to find, I don't know if my body's going to get stronger. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I couldn't be comfortable all the time with the ribs. I was walking around at work and my manager was like, "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" I was like, "My body hurts. My body's in pain." So I definitely don't want to push that to the point where it's worse. So I'm probably just going to take off Monday and I'm going to go on Tuesday and we'll see how I feel after that. And then maybe I'll just go on Thursday. But oh yeah, I had food poisoning on Monday too. Like, it was such a crazy week. I woke up, I ate brisket and on Sunday night at like 3 a.m. I ate a bunch of homemade brisket and then I ate peanut butter and jelly on toasted English muffins, like 3 or 4 half English muffins. And then I went to sleep on the couch. And I woke up in the morning sick. I had to throw up. And I don't know if that's called food poisoning or if that's just like making a bad choice. But I think I did one of the two things. I don't know, man. Being sick is never fun. Oh, Jesus Christ. Theme song coming back at us. Fuck. I don't like being sick. It does give me a lot of chance. Like, I've been playing the guitar a lot and I get to watch a lot of movies. I watched the movie Yuga. Can you hear that thunder? We're about to do a little rainstorm out here, baby. Rainstorm. I'm taking care of my roommate's dog. There's so much going on right now. I'm like, I had to call out of work for 2 days. I'm taking care of another person's dog. I'm taking care of myself. This is like, it's like 100% increase of normal. What am I taking care of? I got a cat now. That's like a point. That's like less than a 25% increase in like having to take care of something. A cat isn't even like a real pet. I have this cat. I'm like, I remember after like a week and a half of having it, one day I got home from work. I was like sitting on my bed, taking off my shoes. I leaned back. I like crushed it. I like laid on the cat. Like, and it was like, so it was like, hey, you don't know I'm here? You've been paying attention. It was the first day I just wasn't like all about paying attention to this cat. I mean, this is a good podcast. Anyway, baby. Well, I've been watching a lot of movies. I watched the movie You Got Mail, which is not for males traditionally. I think it's one of the best comedy movies I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen it's a romantic comedy. If you've ever seen You Got Mail, it was made in 1998 when like AOL Instant Messenger first came out. So they made a movie, and when you watch it now, there's like Tinder and Bumble. So in the context of today, the premise of the movie doesn't make a lot of sense because it's like how people get we have all the catfish TV shows, like all this. We all know that like you don't just develop some kind of personal relationship through anonymity on the internet. Like you would never do that. But what they do, they have AOL Instant Messenger. They probably met in some chat room and they're just like, it's 2 people, Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. And they're just messaging about just like, they can't tell each other personal details about their life. So they can't tell each other names or what they do or anything personal. They're just talking about bullshit. They're talking about movies. They're talking about books, all that shit. But it turns out in real life, Tom Hanks' character is a multi-millionaire owner of a chain bookstore that he owns with his father and his grandfather. And then she is a small bookstore owner, a children's bookstore, where her mom made the bookstore. So there we go. Had to do it. And they fall in love with each other on the internet. And then when they meet, they film the movie so well. In the intro of the movie, they show them talking on the internet or whatever, and then the intro credits with the music. I think it's like a Cranberry song too. They're like walking around the New York streets, buying flowers, getting coffee, and they're right next to each other all the time. They're like in the same neighborhood. That's one of the things they bond over is how much they love New York City. Like, I guess they find out they both live in New York, but they're like, oh, we don't want to run into each other. We don't want to know who each other are. And then eventually they decide to meet. But when they decide to meet, they had already, Joe Fox and Kathleen Kelly had already met in real life. And she found out that he was the owner of Fox Books, which was opening a store around the corner from her store and was going to put her store out of business. And that's what Fox Books does. They sit around, the father, the son, and the grandfather, the Holy Trinity. They sit around in a room and they talk about crushing small businesses and taking their clientele. They love that shit. So they meet at a dinner party, and they're each there with their significant others that they're not really in love with. Each of these significant others, they're people that match up with them really well. They're the same kind of people. They're like ruthless, and they're like assholes, rich people, or like that's what the girl is like for Tom Hanks. And then the other guy for Meg Ryan, he's like a contemporary, like he's all up his own ass, like an author for a magazine. But what they find out is opposites attract. They find themselves, even when they don't know they're the online partners, they find themselves being like into each other. Because they meet in the bookstore. He's hanging out. This is what's hilarious about the Tom Hanks character. And I might have said Tom Cruise a couple times in this. I don't know. In my mind, when I think Tom Hanks, I want to say Tom Cruise. But in the beginning, Tom Hanks, they show you that he's got a brother that's like 4 years old. That is because his dad's always fucking younger women that were always Tom Hanks's nanny when he was a kid. So he's got a 4-year-old brother, and then he's got like a 7-year-old aunt, which is like his grandfather, who's super old, also just banging younger ladies. And then so he's got like, he's hanging out with these 2 children that are like his aunt and his brother, and he's taking them out. He takes them to the bookstore to just like see what's going on, and he's like showing them a good time. He's like, he takes them to a carnival. He's taking these kids around everywhere. And then he ends up talking to Meg Ryan's character. And he likes her a lot, and he's like embarrassed that he's Joe Fox. So he like doesn't want to tell her. So you could think that what's also weird about the movie now, when you watch it outside of the context of like the late 90s, is it's kind of like a fucked up story. It's kind of like this guy comes in, he's a millionaire, but he's got flaws, like bad flaws, like he likes crushing small business. And he does crush her business, and she goes under. She has to close the store. When he finds out who she is, they're supposed to go meet. She's got a book with a flower in it, and he sees her inside of the cafe, and he goes in and even talks to her. He goes in and he hangs out, and I think he wasn't going to, but he does. And then she ends up kind of hurting his feelings. But you're like, this guy's a fucking millionaire, and he's crushing her business. Like, right now, if you watch it, you'd be like, who gives a fuck about this guy, right? You don't really have the sympathy. I can suspend disbelief to like watch the movie and enjoy it. But a lot of people, if they watch it for the first time, they'd be like, fuck this whole thing, because he crushes her business. And then months later, they're still talking on the internet, and he like plans this whole elaborate thing where he's like, oh, you got to meet the guy again. So he's like giving her advice, but then she's messaging him, and he knows that he's the guy. So he's like starts playing her, and then he tells her as Joe Fox, they've been hanging out. So he like nurtures this relationship with her. Her store is closed, gone under. Then he's like starts chilling with her, and he's like running into her in the street, using what he finds out in the online conversation to like get to know her better. And they have this great friendship. And then on the day that she's supposed to meet the online guy, so they set a meet, and she hangs out with Tom Hanks in the morning, and she's like, hey, so I'm supposed to meet the guy today. I'm meeting him, and we're going to hang out in the park. And so they talk about what they're going to do. And while he's walking her home, right before she's going to go meet him, he's like, I'm in love with you, essentially, and what if I wasn't this guy that did that stuff? What if I wasn't who I was? Maybe we could be in love. And she's like, you could tell she's into him and she likes him, but she's like, but what about this guy? I've spent all this time. I'm getting this close to it, and you are that guy, the fucking millionaire that fucked up my store. And so it like fucks with her. It fucks with her. And then she goes to meet the guy in the park, and it's him. And then she just doesn't care. She's like happy about it. It's kind of fucked up. He like manipulates her into a relationship when he didn't really have to do that. You know, like maybe it was a thing where the side I tried to play it on was like, if he just went for it and met her right there, and she found out who she was, like, or who he was, she wouldn't want to date him. She's like, I'm not going to hang out with you. This is bullshit. But they ended up being friends and like hanging out a lot, and then she was really into him anyway. And then he ends up being the guy that she was into before she even met Joe Fox. Before his bookstore was even going to open, she had already gotten to know him. So I don't know. It's kind of a tale of a millionaire that crushes a woman's family-owned small business. Her mother's gone, and the bookstore is like everything that she loves. But then she also has this side journey they don't get to focus on very much, where she's trying to be like brave and outgoing and do stuff that she's wanted to do. And she ends up being a writer, like a children's book writer, that she never would have got the chance to do that if she was worrying about the store. And then she just falls in love with the millionaire guy, and kind of the connection with the millionaire guy is what feels like it sets up her new career. I mean, they tried to make it sound like, oh, everybody that knows about children's book knows that Kathleen Kelly has impeccable taste, and she knows people go with what she says is good. And they wanted her to be like an editor, but she ended up being an author. But it's kind of like the attraction from this guy's bookstore, like the news from that, is the only thing that made her. I'm analyzing this movie super deep, but it was kind of like, I love the movie. It's one of the only movies I've ever watched where I find myself like a lady would do, like I like breathe in, I like put my hand on my chest. I'm like, when they're walking around in the street, they don't know who each other are. Like all those moments of suspense where they're about to meet, or it's just like, and then he doesn't meet her at his assistant is Dave Chappelle, Tom Hanks' assistant. And he's with him, goes with him, does everything. He goes up and sees the girl in the cafe, and he's like, oh, the girl's here. She's cute, but she kind of looks like Kathleen Kelly. And he's like, oh, she's cute, but I hope she's not like her. He's like, well, if you don't like her, if you don't like Kathleen Kelly, you're probably not going to like this lady. And he's like, whoa, why you say that? He's like, because this lady is Kathleen Kelly. So then he leaves. He sends Dave Chappelle home. He's like, I'm not going to meet her. And then you're like, fuck, he's going to stand her up. This is going to crush her. And she doesn't deserve this. Meg Ryan doesn't deserve this. But then he goes in anyway. And he hangs out and he poses as he's just the guy. He's just Joe Fox. He's not the guy. And she roasts his ass. And he gets his feelings hurt and he leaves. But I don't know, dude. It's kind of like a movie. If the premise was even pitched in Hollywood today, they wouldn't make it. Because they'd go like, the people don't want to see this millionaire guy, and the whole thing is just unbelievable. Like they'd have to be on Tinder. It's like, that's untrustworthy. Everybody's a bot. Is there like some rich? Also, if you were a rich no one does things under anonymity anymore because there's like no trust. Trust is old. That's out. Trust is done. Now it's like, if Joe Fox was on Tinder, he would be like Joe Fox, owner of Fox Books, and he would like pictures of him on a yacht, like smoking a cigar. He's like hanging out with TikTokers, because that's what girls would be like. Oh, I want to hang out with this guy. But that's, so people wouldn't buy that. People wouldn't buy that it's a random. Also, a multimillionaire whose father is always fucking ladies and whose grandfather is always fucking ladies. Like that he's going to be on AOL Instant Messenger. The premise they are trying to set up is that he's different than those guys, that he is a different person. And Kathleen Kelly kind of shows him the error of his ways. I wish they would have gone a little further in the movie as to be like, they changed the store model a little bit, because they don't adjust the business at all. Like she doesn't become like, there's a scene in the movie where Kathleen Kelly, she closes her store for the final time. She leaves. She locks up. She's walking down the street and she sees the Fox bookstore. And she goes, you see on Meg Ryan is such a good actor in this movie. It's incredible. Like you love her. But she walks into the Fox bookstore and they make it look beautiful. It's this moment where she's like looking around and she's like, oh, this is a huge, beautiful store. All these book options, like all these cashiers. People have the opportunity to buy books at a cheaper price. I think they're trying to show you that it's like, well, I mean, it's not that she's taking it personal. There's this whole thing of like, it's business or it's personal. There's a theme of that in it. And it's like, oh, this is a bookstore. People can hang out in here. And then she goes into the children's section and there's kids laying around everywhere, playing with toys, reading books together in a huge open space. And she's kind of like, looks like she's happy about that. She's like, oh, well, it's not like it's like some evil thing where they're stealing from people. They're actually it is a big space for people to hang out and enjoy books. So it's not the end of the world. But then she's in the children's book department And some woman is asking a sales clerk, she's like, hey, I'm looking for this book series. Do you know the, and he's like, I don't know. Who's the author? What is it? And she answers the question. She answers the lady's question, like goes above and beyond with her answer, gives her book recommendations, what to start with, other things that are really good. And it just gives her a lot of information about the author and spells the author's name, and the author's name is like really hard to spell. And Joe Fox had seen her, I guess, come into the store, and he's like around the escalator spine. He sees that happen. And I think that was a moment maybe where they could have been like, if I can correct a Hollywood movie that's a major success, one of the best comedies, self-admitted, that I've ever seen, they should have made that into a little bit of something later in the movie, where it was like he sees that like, oh, the way we do business could be better. We could be more knowledgeable. Let's try to make that adjustment. And maybe they did do that. Maybe they planned to do that. And then in the editing room, they were like, we don't really need to do that. Because it's 1998, baby. They're not worried about all that stuff, how you're going to really feel. They just got to get to the end. Happy ending. They're in the park kissing. The dog's on Tom Hanks' blazer. He's pulling on his blazer. I mean, that's what people are worried about. So I don't know, dude. It's the premise of the movie. If you were a young person today seeing it for the first time, it'd probably be hard to get on board with. But it's also so romantic. I think everybody loves it still. But like in the future, let's say 10 years from now, an 18-year-old, like somebody that's 8 years old right now, watches You've Got Mail. They don't even like get into, at the beginning, they just start with the dial-up thing. So if you didn't know what that was, you would be so confused. They don't premise what it is. They're just like the internet. They're like, I'm talking to somebody. It's like chat rooms with those usernames, anonymous stuff doesn't exist. I mean, how long have we talked about You've Got Mail? Like 20 minutes? I love it. Fully recommend watching it. I watched Sleepless in Seattle. That one's less of a comedy. I thought those movies were made in some kind of package deal, like they were made back to back or something, but they weren't. Sleepless in Seattle was made in 1993, and then You've Got Mail was made in 1998. They were like, let's run it back with the lead roles of Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Sleepless in Seattle, I was pretty tired, and I was trying to go to sleep, so I didn't finish the whole thing. But from what I remember, it's kind of another huge invasion of privacy and a premise of a movie that nobody would understand. It's like at the beginning of the movie, a kid, they just set up, here's a guy, he's got a son, his wife's dead. That's like the beginning of. It's got something in common with You Got Mail as well, where they do all that before the opening credits. They give you like the setup of the circumstances of like what's going on with the main character before they do their opening credits, which is like they don't do that anymore, I don't think. But it's like the exact same movie making style, and it made me feel good watching it. But so they're like, oh, there's a dad and a kid, and the mom's dead, and then here's a lady, she's with the guy, but I mean, they're kind of showing you that maybe she's not all the way into what's going on with the guy. So they do their opening credits, and then the boy calls a radio station. It's like a love line, and he's like, oh man, my mom's dead, it's Christmas, and my dad's a sad guy, and he needs help. And then he gets Tom Hanks on the phone, gets his dad on the phone, and he ends up spilling his whole guts out all night to this radio person. and everybody in the country, all over the country, falls in love with this guy. So immediately, talk radio, listening to a live, maybe like a podcast, maybe it's like if it was like Joe Rogan and the guy went on Joe Rogan and then everybody heard it, maybe that would be relatable. But people would be like, what is like a call-in radio station and everybody was listening to it on Christmas night? Like, what the fuck are we talking about? So everyone falls in love with this guy and they want to meet him, and he's like the Bachelor. Like, he's like the new Bachelor in America. Everybody wants to meet this guy. Sleepless in Seattle. That's what they called him. And then Meg Ryan hears it, and she's like, man, I got to break up with my boyfriend, and I'm going to go out and find this guy, and I'm going to fall in love with them. And she goes as far as I think she lives in Baltimore, in Maryland, goes all the way to Seattle, gets her. She sees the guy and his kid, like, they live at like a house by like a pier. They live like on the water. She sees him, and then she just turns around and leaves and goes back to Baltimore. She like doesn't even say, anything. She like gets all the way there. And I mean, I don't know. That's right where I fell asleep because I was like, couldn't believe what was going on. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, that's what a woman, people are so sensitive to like this. That's like stalking, you know, that's like not the way you hate. Nobody would fall in love like that. Like there was the Doors movie. I don't know if you've ever seen the Doors movie. Val Kilmer plays Jim Morrison, but he meets his woman that he like loves, and she's with him like the whole movie until he like dies. But spoiler alert, Jim Morrison dies in the movie. But she is with her boyfriend in California, like in their house. They're asleep in their room on the top floor of the house. And Jim Morrison has been like stalking her all day to find out where she lives. Like he saw her in the street, and I think he said like 2 words to her, and he was like thought he was in love with her. So he followed her around because he had nothing to do because he's like a drug addict, beached, crazy person. And then he waits, like at night, he waits outside her house. He crawls in through her window while she's like in bed asleep with her boyfriend. And then she like wakes up and he like talks to her. And she's like, I guess, an insane drug addict too. Because they make it like this romantic thing that he's in. But he has stalked her, breaking and entering into her house while people are partying in the downstairs. But she's asleep he's came into her room. And then she ends up leaving the guy that she's with for Jim Morrison, I guess because he becomes the lead singer of the Doors. I don't know what, and he was like a film student at UCLA, and he made all this weird shit. I think they kicked him out or something. But I mean, that's not romantic. I don't know if that's how it used to happen. You hear some people talk about like I have a friend. This is the only young person I've ever met that has this story where it's like, you know, I met my husband. When I met him, we had like class together at school, like at college, and he was like really persistent. He always wanted to go out with me. He wanted to ask me out on dates, and I would say no, I don't want to go out with you. And then he asked so much that I finally just said yes, and we went out, and I had a really good time, and I ended up falling in love with the person marrying him. I know one young person with that story, and that's like a lot of older people's stories. But with female empowerment, dude, that's just not how it works anymore. You know, like you're not gonna get to stalk a lady and then be her husband. Like that's not how it's gonna work anymore. That's probably well over. You know, you're not gonna be able to create a fake Tinder profile, you know, or like with no pictures of who you really are and with a fake name, and then message a girl and like develop a good conversation, get to know her, then meet her in public, not disclose that you know that you're the guy from the web chat, and then get to know her in public, cultivate a relationship there, then start giving her advice on how, as a friend, like from a friend thing, even though you're like nurturing this thing where you're interested in each other, and then you flip it and you end up being the guy when she meets you. That's not gonna go over well. Like she's gonna go like, why would you know, like that's gonna cultivate distrust. I would think. I wouldn't be into that. So I think that's a lesson for everybody out there. You know, you can watch You've Got Mail, but don't live the You've Got Mail. Don't be You've Got Mail. Yeah. What a stupid fucking... I mean, I loved the movie. Anyway, people. I mean, what do we got going on now? I talked about the movie. Oh, man, we do want to talk about comedies coming back this week. We got the East Room coming back in Nashville, Tennessee, which is big, which I love the East Room. It's my favorite open mic. And honestly, I haven't enjoyed doing stand-up. And I know, look, if there's any stand-ups in town that know me that are watching my podcast, which why would they, you know? But if they are, it's weird to sometimes admit that, like, I know that people that do stand-up that are going to be successful at it, they probably are always having fun doing it all the time. And they, like, have to do it, and they really want to do it. I want to be like that. But right now in COVID, and if I'm being honest, and other times as well, it hasn't been easy to like enjoy. I'm trying to get back into a space where I'm going to find a way to enjoy doing stand-up comedy because it's important for me to do it. But lately with the all the venue restrictions and COVID still happening, like it's the open mics are all in the same places all week, and there's not very many of them. So it kind of feels like not worth it for me to do. And not that like, and I know that's like almost a defeatist. I entertain the idea that's like a defeatist attitude, or that's like justifying or some shit like that. But really, it's like to go. One of the rooms is not it's kind of my least favorite room to do comedy, and it's probably not by anything even realistic. It's just like the one venue. It's got nothing to do with who runs it. It's got I don't know what it is, but the one place in town that does the most open mics right now, I just don't like doing comedy there. I never liked it since I started. So I just haven't been doing it. But now with the East Room coming back, it makes me feel like I'm actually doing it in a place where comedy is happening. You know, like even though it's an open mic, it makes me feel better about what I'm doing. And it also, with the East Room opening back up, it's going to, I think, create, like the Third Coast Comedy Club, which has been staying closed for, I don't know why. But now that other venues, they don't have to be the first one back, I think it's going to make it easier for them to come back. I think there's going to be a lot more bars. That I know that music people in this town are very liberal. I point to this guy. Music people, like songwriters, I think they're still they're just now getting back to being comfortable doing shows. So I think there's going to be a lot of availability for different kinds of shows, like stand-up shows to happen. So I think you might get some open mics or local showcases a lot more at these bars. So there might be every night like a lot of chances to do stand-up comedy. So I'm excited about that. So this week, I mean, we're getting over the ribs, we're getting over the sinus infection, and I don't want to go out there seeming like I've got COVID-19 at the first time the East Room is back. So if my sinuses go get clear, I'm definitely going to be there, and I'll probably just go anyway. So all that to say, I'm looking forward to getting back into doing stand-up. Hopefully people come out that aren't just comics and honestly, I heard that there's a lot of new comics. So sometimes I get lost in like there might be a misconception. I think I know like all the comics in town, and it's not. My idea of comedy being fun is to go out and do it in front of a bunch of people that don't know who you are. That's what I like about it. Like, that's why I don't like inviting people when I go do stand-up, is because a lot of the times when I do it right now, I'm still figuring out what I'm doing. So you don't want to blow it, like inviting people out to the open mic. But I also enjoy doing comedy for strangers. Like, comedy for me isn't for people that know you. I don't want to invite, like, a nightmare to me sounds like selling out a club in your, like, you know how, like, the way I started that was so fucking stupid. Like, if you got to be a comic that sold out your home club, and then like half the people there were people that know you or are your family, that sounds awful to me. Like, I've seen things like that. I've seen people do that, and I'm like, dude, imagine, because my jokes and a lot of comic jokes, they like work from their real life, but then they take these like situations and they kind of blow them up. They hyperbolize them, and people that know you, that inspire those jokes, if they saw them, they would kind of know what you're talking about, but they would know that you're kind of like moving around the variables and making the situation more extreme, or at least that's how so I would be like, people don't get comedy, they don't get it, you know? So I just, the pressure of that, like performing in front of a bunch of people that I know, I just don't, that's like the extreme scenario where it's like your family or like a girl that you're dating and like stuff like that. But still, like a bunch of friends, like I'm friends with all these comics, and I don't enjoy when the crowd is just all these fucking people that know you. So I kind of wish I was in a situation like I think there's a lot of comedy scenes like in probably cities like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago where you're not, it's just like the comics that see you all the time. And you have to work on, the open mic thing is so weird because you have to work on these jokes to get the beats right. And to like find out what's funny, what's not funny. Is the whole joke not funny? Is just this part of it funny? How are you going to work it out? And you have to do it so many times, maybe to figure out if it's funny. But then like it's all the same people that are hearing you do it every time. So they're like, oh, I already know where this is going. And they're not going to laugh already. So it's like, there have been jokes I've done. Like I did a show at Zany's and I did a set that did really well. But if I did that same set, just went up and did it at an open mic, like I probably wouldn't do well at all. Like, but that's just like, it depends on the open mic. It's so weird. I don't know if every comedy scene is like that everywhere, and it's not always like that. Like at the East Room before COVID, like at Third Coast before COVID. Those are ones where it's like a lot of people that don't do comedy go there for their first time, and they will bring out like 12 people to come support them, to help them like feel like they're not going to be alone when they go to do comedy the first time. So at those venues, you actually end up getting a pretty good audience, because you get to go, if you get to go up before that person, you've got like a receptive audience that's looking to be there to be supportive and to have a good time, which is like what makes comedy fun. And is when an audience is there to have fun and enjoy something, which is not the audience when it's the comics that are there to perform, you know? So I'm not trying to like harp on that's how you get good. That's how you get, and it's like the struggle of that, like really, you're like it's kind of like if you were straining something through like a mesh that's like gets way finer, you know? You're like really refining what you're doing, but also it could be like you're losing shit that you don't need to lose. So it's like this weird, I don't know, like you get into I think there are some people that get into like how I make people laugh at the open mic, and that's not going to be how you make people laugh everywhere, you know? And that what works, whatever you find that makes people laugh in that environment, when you get to the environment where people want to be fun and supportive, your thing might be too crass, or it might be too like not what they get, not. So I think it can really influence your like it can inform your opinion of what it is to perform comedy. So I'm not trying to like go out there and grind and be fucking miserable to do comedy in a situation that I don't really enjoy. And that's been hard for somebody like me to like even admit to myself and then just say on the podcast, because I want to be one of these guys that's like, no matter what, I'm out and I'm doing it and I'm writing and I can't not do it. But it's just not the truth. I want to do comedy and I want to have fun when I do it, you know? And if I know I'm going to go up and do, there's sometimes you're at the open mic and you know you're going to go up and do jokes, and it's just like, none of this is going to, I'm just not going to like these jokes after this because it's not going to work, you know? And maybe that's because my jokes aren't the best right now. I don't know. But there are guys like, sometimes I wish my style, for the open mic, there are guys that have like shorter joke. Like Shane Bianchi is funny everywhere. He's funny on a show and he's funny at an open mic because the jokes are short and they're like, there's energy in the joke. Like they're very funny jokes too. So it's just like, but for me, the way I'm trying to do comedy right now, I'm having to figure out these premises. I'm trying to have to figure out, and I'm not writing these short jokes. That's not really my thing. So I think that style is just not conducive to having as much fun in an environment where the audience isn't there to have fun. So this week we're gonna change that. We're gonna go to the East Room open mic, and I'm gonna try to just love doing comedy anyway. That's what I'm trying to do with the jiu-jitsu. Is again, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast. It's not about going out and fighting a guy or trying to be prepared to defend myself. It's kind of about showing up and doing something even when you don't want to, and believing that I'm going to get better over time and that one day I'm going to be really good. I mean, you can see on my face, I don't know how well you can see on this camera. I got a big scratch on my face. It doesn't look that big, but it's deep. And a guy dug his thumbnail. He like punched me in the face and dug his thumbnail right into my face. And it was okay. I just told him, he's like, oh dude, I'm sorry. And I was like, nah dude, it's cool, whatever, let's go. And he's like, nah dude, I think I cut you. And I was like, I think it's fine. He's like, no bro, it's pretty deep. You should probably go clean that out and you can go check it out. So, I mean, after that, I got my face cut. I got my ribs. The face cut thing didn't bother me, but my ribs fucking hurt. My knee hurts. I mean, it's definitely not just like a mental thing of like, am I going to just keep showing up? But it's like, normally maybe a person would look at this and go, look, I'm an adult. What am I going to go out and just get my ribs hurt or like blow my knee out or something just to do an activity? Like, I don't have to do that. Maybe I shouldn't do this. That's not how I feel about it. I feel guilty that like I might have to take time off so I don't keep getting hurt because I want to keep going and doing it. And they're also, every day where I have class, I can be honest and say that lately I've been waking up and thinking about not going. Even when I started, I would get like this anxiety about going to class, because I think normally if I woke up in the morning and tried to do something like that on such a consistent basis, I just wouldn't do it. I would like fail. I just wouldn't go. So I'm starting to break that habit. Like I'm having faith that I'm going to create habits with this where it's like I can show up and do the thing even if I don't want to do it, or even if I don't see the utility in doing it because I need to do it, and it'll make me better in the long term. The more time I spend doing this, the greater frequency I can do it, the better I'll be sooner. So the COVID thing's been weird. It's created an environment for me where I didn't enjoy doing stand-up. It's hard to admit that, but now that the shit's coming back, hopefully I can get into a zone where even if it's a little bit more enjoyable, but even if it's not enjoyable at times, I'm just going to say fuck it anyway, and I'm just going to stick with it and do it. I mean, we'll see, baby. That's what I have to do. That's what I'm thinking about doing. And I mean, to hear about that, if you're like, I mean, that might sound lame as fuck. I don't know. That might sound like, I mean, fuck you, dude. Just like get up and go do what you think you want to do. But stand up is not that fucking easy to do. If you've never done it, and again, this is an idea that I entertain because I think you have to. If I'm not a person that just feels inspired to always, it's like something I have to do. Oh, I found it and I fell in love with it. And being up there and talking into the mic is like the thing that makes me feel good, and I want to do it all the time. I'm not that person, but I want to be that kind of person. And there are a lot of times in my life where I haven't been the kind of person that I want to be at all. And I just had to take small steps towards being that person. And what I found is worse than anything is to guilt myself. It is so weird. The stand-up thing seems like the worst thing maybe to go for if I'm who I am. Because the sympathy of like a stand-up is not strong. So it's not like people are going to be forgiving it here and you say that and go like, oh yeah, I get it. They'll be like, well, fuck you. You're not going to, whatever. You're not like people aren't like, they're not going to like let you off the hook with, and I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's not even about what other people think. It's like me. I have like a stand-ups like level of guilt that I put on myself. So I'm like, fuck myself. I'm like, oh, you don't want to do it. It's like, you're a loser. You're a loser. You don't want to do it. But that is counterproductive. If it's something I really want to do, I got to commit to doing it and realize what's going on, realize where I short myself or where I fail, where I lose traction, where I don't work hard, and just have to work towards doing that better more often. And if I beat myself up for being a loser, I'm definitely never going to do it. So I don't know, baby. We're going to do it. We're going to do stand-up comedy this week. And I'm going to do my trans joke about trans men. I'm going to do my what else am I going to do? My joke about adopting cats, and that's for lonely people. I'm going to do breakup jokes. I'm going to do it a lot. I'm going to do a lot of stuff. So I'm going to try to get out there, and Wednesday, I think there's a new open mic. So if I get off work early on a Wednesday, which I think is Larry Reeb is Zany's Comedy Club. So I'm going to get off work and head over and do the Fat Cat Slims open mic. I think it's the very first one they're going to do. And they might have done it this week already. I don't know. But anyway, Nashville Comedy's comes to Nashville. No, it's all coming back, man. So I'm happy about that. And I'm just going to try to I was thinking about this last night. I saw a comedian that I know. There's a show at a place called the Comedy Bar, and it's like the second comedy venue in town, I guess. It's like the second best one, but it's still not great, but it's fine. It's like they haven't nurtured like a clientele yet. The people in there don't always know they're gonna see a comedy show, even though it's called the Comedy Bar. It's like a very confusing time. But also, I haven't been going over there to hang out. These are all misconceptions. These are all conceptions I have from like maybe a year ago of not going to some of these places. So I saw a comedian that was on a show at Zany's. They were like on, and they did well at Zany's, and then they just went to the Comedy Bar and were hanging out. And I was like, damn, I got to get back into doing that. I got to get back into like going and, I'm like hanging out I'm starting to see that's what doing these classes and stuff has started to open my eyes up to my time. Now that I'm like being more productive, it was like last Wednesday when I went and I did class, and then I went and had lunch, and on the way home I would have come home, I would have chilled, I would have worked on thinking about some stuff that I was going to do, making some notes or something. But instead I was like, oh, I want to do more something. So even though I was like really tired, probably just as tired as I always am, I wanted to do more, and I went out and ran 4 miles. And that took, there was time before stretching, time after stretching, a warm down walk. So it took me like, it was like 45, 50 minutes more of my time in the day. So now I'm starting to sit like at night. Like this week, even though I was sick, I was thinking about, man, when I get off after one show at the comedy club, there are other things going on. I should go out and just like hang out. If I'm going to go home and be up late, I should just go hang out. So I'm starting to change my perspective, I think. I mean, that's the faith I'm trying to have in like creating change. And I was having a conversation with my roommate. And this isn't what I intended to talk about on the podcast, honestly, but we were talking about, do people really ever change? And I think people do. And this person was saying that they think that people don't. And I found myself like, and I have no problem admitting this, I kind of have to believe that people can change. Because if they can't, I'm fucked. Everybody, a lot of people are fucked. Like, are people that are successful, all the people that are successful, or people that have good habits, did they just start from the beginning doing it like that? Not everybody. There are people that found a way to come up, and I'm not trying to turn this into a David Goggins motivational podcast, but like, you can fucking change who you are. You can change. It's hard because of those things I talked about. And I talk about it specific to being a comic, but people have like guilt. They beat themselves up. People hold themselves down. Look, dude, this is what I learned from jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu makes you believe. David with 2 arms up. Jiu-jitsu makes you believe. I'm learning that I'm good at controlling guys on the ground already, right? As long as they're not like a purple belt, brown belt, black belt. Like, there are blue belts and white belts that I'm pretty good at controlling them. But what I'm finding is that I'm grabbing the gi and I'm holding tight. But what I'm really doing is holding position for them. What I need to be doing is to have faith in technique, relax, create space to be able to make an escape and to progress, do a sweep, and start to do my own pass, start to do my own things, be productive and aggressive on my end. And a lot of the time when I'm good right now at controlling, I'm holding them in a position. I'm not creating space. I'm holding them down tight, and I'm holding myself in position. I'm actually wearing myself out. I'm making myself tired. That can extrapolate into your life, your mentality of how you look at what you're doing. Like, if you don't remain calm, think about how to actually create change, create momentum, move in a direction so you can get on top and you can start to do your thing. That's hard to do. And you have to figure out, I have to figure out the techniques from going to class. How am I going to do that in life? But that's what you can do. Like, can people change? I can learn jiu-jitsu. I already know more in 5 weeks of class. I know more than I did 5 weeks ago. I'm not able to execute on much, but I can remain calm when I'm getting smothered. My breath is better. My physical conditioning is better. I don't feel like I'm going to throw up after the drilling. After one round of sparring, I can do a couple rounds of sparring in a row. I can do 3 out of 4 rounds and not feel like I'm going to and not puke, as I burp into the microphone. So that's small scale evolution of change. I can learn a new skill. I learned to be an audio engineer. I can, learn how to do something fun, learn the craft of stand-up comedy, make that better. And then if you do those things for long periods of time, you might look up and you're different. You're a different person. You've changed. And it's a motivational podcast. So I think people can. I don't think there's any other choice than to believe it. If you don't believe it, then that's true. I think it is true. Because maybe you can get good at holding things down in life, but you're just holding them right down where they are. And then you won't change, But you got to learn the 4 agreements, baby. I'm learning 4 agreements. I'm learning 48 laws of power. We're learning a lot of different new rules. I don't know if we talked about the 48 laws of power on this podcast. That might have been a different podcast. But anyway, folks, I don't know. We talked about a lot on this one. I wanted to talk about the Billy Joel Saunders fight. maybe I will talk about it just for a minute. I mean, we're at 50 minutes here. I wanted to talk about Elon Musk. I don't think I'll talk about that because I don't know. We'll talk about that for just a second. Elon Musk, the SNL. I really don't care about the Elon Musk thing. Dogecoin went up and it went back down because people were enthusiastic. I don't know what they thought was going to fucking happen. Dogecoin is like, it was 70 cents a coin, I think, at the most, and it rose in like a week from like 35 cents a coin. But Elon Musk, not funny, and we knew he wasn't going to be funny. And also SNL, not funny. So we kind of knew that the whole thing wasn't going to be funny, if we're being real. I mean, SNL lately, I mean, they fired Shane Gillis. Shane Gillis and that Gillian Keeves stuff, if you haven't seen the Gillian Keeves sketches online, go to YouTube and check it out. Shane Gillis is making some of the and I don't know, the guy's name is like McKeever. I don't know his first name. But those guys are making some of the funniest sketch comedy I've seen in years, like in such a long time. And everything they do is better than everything SNL does. Like their worst sketch is better than like the best sketch SNL does. And they're also not held down by having to do things. It's not like they're doing politically incorrect things. They're just doing things that are like a little too dirty for SNL to try to do. I mean, I don't think it's that they curse. But like SNL could do what Gillian Keeves does. But it just kind of shows you how big they missed on like throwing out Shane Gillis. Because so many people post like, Bowen Yang, look, and it's hard to, you shouldn't shit on other comedians. You shouldn't bury other comics. SNL is an institution. They are like, I can do that. Bowen Yang is a comedian, so I don't want to shit on him. But there's a couple things he's done on the Weekend Update. They're kind of, because he's like one of the, people know about him because of the Shane Gillis thing. They're like putting him on to the Weekend Update thing. And he did a sketch as like the iceberg from the Titanic. And it was horrible. And he was talking about like that they were like colonizers where it was horrible. I mean, it was like, I was like, am I wrong? Like when I was watching, I was like, maybe this is funny and I'm just not getting it. Like, because it seems like it has the timing and the energy of something that would be funny, but it was not funny. And then there was another sketch he did where he was just talking about imperialism and being and just being a gay person. And I was like, I mean, it's the Weekend Update. Are we doing a joke? I mean, it seemed like it, again, these things sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is supposed to be a joke. Am I supposed to be laughing? I don't know. And that's not good for sketch comedy. If I'm going like, wait, is somebody telling me about social justice? And again, he's a comic, it seems like he's trying his best to make it funny. But he needs better writers, bro. He needs help. They all need help, man. And I'm not saying I could do better, but Shane Gillis could do better. And they should have hired that guy. But anyway, that's my opinion on the SNL thing. I mean, how funny would some of those sketches with Elon probably have been if Shane Gillis was allowed? But they wouldn't allow him to be on there. And the sketches he writes with Gillian Keeves, they wouldn't allow him. Like Bob Isis, like Isis Toyota, he's like a car dealership owner named Bob Isis. And he had the dealership before Isis was popular, before it was big in the news, before anybody knew what Isis was. And so he's doing it's an auto commercial. And then it just cuts to side scenes where he's talking with his staff about what they're going to put in the commercial. And it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they do Uncle Daycare. That's one they could have done on SNL for sure. I mean, there's parts of it where it's like people are just so afraid of like cancel. I don't know what it's like to be a huge business like SNL. I try to think maybe it's like a hedge fund, like what I know about hedge funds, where they have so much skin in the game. If they move into like a state of loss, it's big loss. So they kind of want to just stave off loss. So maybe SNL is just like, we don't want to create like an environment where people are going to stop watching or protest us because we'll lose a lot of money because we're a big platform. But also it's like people never watch SNL more than when there's some kind of controversy going on. Like Bill Burr is on there and they think he's racist, or Chappelle's on there and they think he's transphobic, or Elon Musk is on there and they think his family owns an emerald mine in South Africa. You know, there's a lot of there's never more views than that. Like they, you know, I don't know, man. SNL isn't gonna die. I mean, things aren't meant to live forever. Think like the Tonight Show. Is it gonna die? It's not meant to live forever. There's TikTokers on there. They're doing TikTok. TikTokers are doing their debut musical guest. They're the musical guest. Like the Tonight Show musical guests are like the biggest bands in the world. Like people that you should know about. That's what the musical guest is. And they're doing a TikToker is like doing an aired performance. It's not even a live performance. It's like a recording music video where she's lip syncing the recording of song. It's like a horrific. It's like a damnation of like an American institution. It's bastardization. It's a perversion of an American institution, the Tonight Show. And it makes me sick. Jimmy Fallon, you make me sick. I bet he's not having a good time. I bet it's like kind of like a death sentence, Yeah, like SNL. He was on SNL. And for a lot of people, you wouldn't imagine this maybe from the outside, but SNL is like, it's so hard to do something. It used to be harder. I guess now, like, people can transition into being a movie star. I don't know. There's a lot of different things you can do. You could be a talk show host. You could fucking do your podcast. I don't know. But SNL, like Norm Macdonald, Bill Hader, they talk about like that's where you would go. Your career's like going to end there. Even though you were like an unknown when you started, it's like so big. It's like after SNL, you'll always have been on SNL. And Bill Hader has gone on to be a huge actor and a director, and he wrote the TV show Barry, and he was the lead in that, and he was in It. I mean, he's so funny. He's been in so many things. And people still know him as Stefan from SNL. Like, SNL is probably still his biggest credit. Everybody knows he's from SNL. John Mulaney wasn't even, like, on SNL. He was just a writer. And people as big as Mulaney's been, a lot of people know him from that. So it kind of establishes a reputation for you. And the Tonight Show, I'm sure it's just, like, such a next-level version of that. That you did SNL, and now you're the Tonight Show host. It's like, how can you do anything after that? Like Conan, David Letterman. It's like people were mad at David Letterman for like doing another show. He was like doing a new talk show where he's like in these theaters, he's in front of a live audience, and people were like, you just should have stopped and never done it. It's like the guy can't do anything else. It's like maybe he enjoyed it, like having a show, but now it's like, I can have more control over the format and what we're going to do and how I'm going to ask questions. And people are like, nah. They're like, you already did this other thing, so we're kind of done with you. Like, I imagine the stress of that is horrific. And Jimmy Fallon, again, he's just like a comic. He's just like anybody else. But he's an alcoholic guy, and he's probably pretty. Jimmy Kimmel, another guy. He's a guy that I look at. He has such, like, his enthusiasm is got to be fake, bro. I mean, I'm trying to be less judgmental, but I look at Jimmy Kimmel and he's like smiling, and he's like, I'm like, the way he laughs, and I'm like, there's no way anyone's that enthusiastic about listening to another. How many days do you do this? And you're just like, hey, you're like, oh yeah, you're like, and I'm interested in this thing this conversation that we produced. We came up with the story ahead. It's like, all right, what's your bit? Like, what are you gonna do? Maybe our writers will help punch it up, and you have to feign interest. It's like, dude, that's why podcasting, I think, has taken off, is because people aren't sitting around like planning to go, all right, well, we'll talk about this, and when we talk about it, I'll do this point, you take that point, like on ESPN or on other talk shows where they have the pre-production meeting in the morning where like what they're going to talk about. On podcasting, they don't do that. So you hear people kind of going over ideas and saying them for the first time and having legitimate, authentic exploration of thoughts. And that's why the late night shows, when you watch them now, you're like, this is not good. It's like watching a sitcom with a laugh track. It's like built in, too produced. There's a person on the side telling the audience when to clap and when to laugh and when to cheer. Like, there's an audience pump up person. So it's not like authentic. And I think even though that people don't know that, they don't see the audience pump up guy, they don't see all the production, you can sense the authenticity in it when it's in its entertainment. And these are the same people now, like Joe Rogan or anybody that does a podcast. Comedians are the people that would have been late night hosts, but there were only like 3 late night host spots, like 2 really, And there's like the Tonight Show and then Letterman's show on the other network, and then there was the secondary one on each of those channels, and then I think there's even a third one on each of those channels. There might have been one on, there's a guy on TBS, there's a, Arsidio's guy, there's like different ones on different places. But those people that host those are always comics. And now podcasting is giving people a platform to be the host of their own talk show. And to do it before you had to like shove this comic into this box and make them wear a suit and produce what they're doing. And now you have an opportunity to see what those comics would do if they had control of the whole thing. And it's low production and it's authentic. And I mean, how many podcasts have audiences? The live audience doesn't, some people do live podcasts, but there are probably like no podcasts that only succeed because they do it live. It's like a secondary thing. So the live studio audience isn't even like a necessity. The laughing, that taking up space, the audience guy making the people do that, that's not even necessary. But the production is like based around that. They give space for the laugh. They're entertaining the crowd. And then when they show, that's the format of that show, of that concept of show. And podcasting is kind of blowing that up, which I think is interesting. And how long are they going to try to do like the late nights? And it was so atrocious in the COVID. Like, how obvious was it when they, like Colbert, Bill Maher, all these people, Jimmy Fallon, they would do their monologues, or they would leave space for the laughs like they would have done on TV, instead of just like finding a way to do genuine content, like something that's entertaining. Like they just tried to do, they're so committed to this dead format. That's so crazy to me. Like Colbert is such a genius guy with the Colbert Report, and he was such a master at that. And there's other guys that they've been so successful in that format that they get stuck in. And it's not just them. Maybe if it was them, if they watch this, they go, "Oh, we need to do this different." If they were the producer, if they would take it a different direction. But these people that have always done it the same way, they're like trapped in doing it one way, and it was like so not entertaining. I think it was pretty brutal to like their fan base, like, 'cause how many people stopped watching that shit because it was awful, and they're not going to watch it again. I wonder if they're going to take that shit off the air and end up doing like podcasts on TV, because TV is going to die too. I mean, people's parents, grandparents, they're probably the only people left with television packages, like people with Comcast, people with DirecTV, with Dish Network. It's like, I don't know. Young people fucking don't have that. Who's sitting at home watching The Tonight Show, scrolling the TV guide, doing any of that? So that's gotta, how long can they prop it up? It's like newspapers, Like newspapers aren't going to make it forever, and they're already not making it. Newspapers went online. There are articles on the internet now on a subscription service. So what are we going to do with TV? It'll probably become podcast networks. Or there's other TV shows that'll make it, but like this thing, the late night thing is going to die, dude. There's no way it's going to make it. Jimmy Fallon might be the last host of The Tonight Show. They might cancel The Tonight Show after Jimmy Fallon. What will happen first? Will society end and there will be no TV and no electricity, or will they end The Tonight Show? I don't know. Anyway, folks, we'll talk about other stuff on the podcast at a later time. We'll talk about Billy Joe Saunders later. I will say, if you're a boxing fan, it was bullshit that he got hurt. He was winning the fight. Not that he got hurt, but that he got hurt and he had to end the fight. He couldn't finish it. And the crowd was booing him. I mean, it was such bullshit. He already lost. They were booing him in the beginning. It kind of made me sick. Anyway, thanks for coming back, watching the podcast. As always, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you get the share link. Share this thing on social media so we can get more viewers. It helps a lot when you do that. Rate and review and do a comment. Thanks again, folks, for coming out. I'm David Chasteen. Fuck.